Hello everyone and welcome to the Practical English Brain and welcome to Past Perfect, Progressive or Continuous Tense. I want to assure you that if you stay with me till the end of this explanation, it means that you're mastering this advanced grammatical point. So let's begin with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I'm gonna be covering these 5 points in this video. First of all, the standard definition of this tense, and then the general conception that why we use this tense and how we use it. And then the structures and examples for all different forms. After that, contractions or short forms. And finally, all the usages of this tense. So, on the next slide, there is the standard definition of this tense. Look, we use past perfect progressive tense to talk about the duration of an ongoing action before a specific time or another action in the past. Okay, this is the standard definition of this tense. Here, I'm gonna explain the general conception of using past perfect progressive tense through this diagram. Look, now this is the present time, 2 p.m. or the year is 2021. The idea is that we talk about the duration of something that was in progress from some time up to another time in the past, before a specific time or before another action in the past. Okay, so for example, I say they had been drinking tea for 10 minutes before 9 a.m. So the action of drinking tea was in progress for 10 minutes from this time up to this time. There's a duration of 10 minutes before a specific time in the past. Now the current time is 2 p.m. and we talk about the duration of an action, okay, the start and finished before this specific time. Or for example, you can say we'd been living in India or we'd been living in Pakistan for 10 years before we came back to our country. Oh, for example, you can say we'd been living in India for 3 years before 2018. Okay, so now the concept is that the action of living in India started in the past, finished in the past, or it started and came up to another time continuously, and or before a specific time in the past or before another action in the past. For example, if it's a specific time, so we'd been living in India for 3 years before 2018, or we'd been living in India for 3 years before we came back to our country. So that's the concept. But there's another slide, and there's a kind of exceptional case, and I want to teach you this as well. Look, if you have action or dynamic verbs, you can use past perfect continuous tense to talk about the duration of an ongoing action before a specific time or before another action in the past. That's possible. But if your main verb of the sentence is not an action or dynamic verb and it's a state verb or not progressive verb, do not use past perfect continuous tense. Just like we don't use non-progressive verbs in all continuous tenses, so we don't use it here either, okay? I mean, there are a few exceptional cases, but my advice for you is not to use them in continuous tenses unless you have the full command over those exceptional cases, okay? So, like these verbs, want, need, like, love, belong, know, have, be. For example, we could not say, I had been wanting a car for many years before 2018, or for example, I had been needing something for a while before, I found it. Or for example, I had been knowing you for many years, before you left the country, or I had been loving my country for many years, or since I was born up to, for example, last year. So, I mean, do not use state verbs in past perfect continuous tense. Okay, I hope this concept is clear. Now, structures for this tense: affirmative structure for affirmative sentences or positive sentences, subject at the beginning, then had, been, as helping verbs, and then main verb ing form, and then rest of the sentence. Look at the first example. He had been doing his homework for an hour before 10 p.m. So this sentence matches the structure. He, subject, had been, helping verbs, doing, main verb ing, and his homework for an hour before 10 p.m. is rest of the sentence or roots. And the second example is made according to negative form, according to the second structure. If you want to make negative sentences, subject, then hadn't been or had not been, three verbs as auxiliary verbs, and then main verb ing and the rest of the sentence. Look at the example. He had not been doing his homework for an hour before 10 p.m. Or you can say he hadn't been doing his homework for an hour before 10 p.m. Or for example, I hadn't been teaching English for more than 5 years before I came back to my country, for example. So that's possible. Now on this slide, there are structures for interrogative and negative interrogative sentences. So the first structure is for interrogative or yes/no questions. At the beginning of your sentence, you bring had, then subject, then been, then main verb ing, then rest of the sentence. Look at the example. Had he been doing his homework for an hour before 10 p.m.? Or for example, had you been teaching English for 3 years, for 5 years, for several years, for many years at that institution before you joined this academy, for example? So negative interrogative sentences, the helping verb had at the beginning, then subject, then not, verb third from the rest of the sentence. But keep in mind that this is the complete form, or this structure is for the complete form of negative interrogative sentences. So look at these two examples. Had he not been doing his homework for an hour before 10 p.m.? So this is negative interrogative. But keep in mind that in spoken English, in daily spoken English, the short form is most commonly used, that I brought in the last example. Instead of had he not been doing his homework, you say, hadn't he been doing his homework for an hour before 10 p.m.? Or hadn't you been teaching English for many years before you came here? Or hadn't you been living in Pakistan for several years before you came back to country? So this is how we use interrogative or negative interrogative structures or sentences and using past perfect tense. WH or information questions. At the beginning of your sentence, you bring one of the WH question words and then had as a helping verb, then subject, then been, then main verb ing form, then rest of the sentence. Look at the examples. What had you been doing for an hour before 10 p.m. last night? I've brought the same example in all different forms. But the important thing is that you should understand, the concept, the structures, how to use them correctly. So, or the second example says, where had they been learning English for a year before 2020? Keep in mind that mentioning the duration for a year, for 2 years, for an hour, for 3 hours, for many years, for a few hours, for a few minutes is very important. If we don't use the time duration, we don't need past perfect continuous tense. In that case, you can just use past continuous tense. For example, I was doing my homework before you called me. Okay? So now, if you want to use past perfect continuous tense, you must mention the duration of the action. I had been doing my homework for an hour before you called me. That is the concept. Okay, so you can also use negative interrogative form inside WH or information questions. Look at these two examples. The first example says, there's one example, sorry. So why had you not been doing your homework for an hour before 10 p.m. last night? Or you can use the short form, why hadn't you been doing your homework for an hour before 10 p.m.? Or for example, you can say, why hadn't you been talking to him for a few days before, you left the city? For example, that's possible, okay? So you can use negative interrogative inside WH questions as well. And now we're gonna move to the next slide, contractions. Look, in spoken English, the short forms are very, very common. So learn the contraction forms or the short forms and try to use them in spoken English. Okay, so I had been becomes had been. Okay, we had been, we'd been. You had been, you'd been. He had been, he'd been. She had been, she'd been. They had been, they'd been. It had been, it had been. Okay, had not been, hadn't been. So this is how we use the short forms or contracted forms. So now here I'm gonna be explaining the most common usages of past perfect, continuous, or progressive tense. And I want you to please pay close attention. So, the first usage. They'd been playing cricket for 3 hours before 5 p.m. So now, in this case, the first usage, when we talk about the duration of an ongoing action before a specific time in the past. So the action of playing cricket was going on for an hour before 5 p.m. Now, let's say the current time is 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. So we talk about something in the past. Okay, now the current time is 7 p.m. and I'm talking about something that was in progress for an hour before that specific time, 5 p.m. in the past. The second usage. You may also use since sometimes, but it's not very common. Most commonly, when we use past perfect continuous tense, the preposition for is very common. But sometimes it's okay, you can use it. He'd been doing his BBA, his MBA since 2006 up to 2020 before he graduated from university. Now, you can talk about the duration of an action that started at a specific time and continuously came up to another specific time in the past, and then something else happened. Look, the action of doing BBA started in 2016 and it came continuously up to 2020, and then something else happened. Another action took place. I graduated from, university, or he graduated from university. So that's the second usage, okay? You may use the preposition since as well as possible. Okay, number three. Hold on. He'd been working with you two for a long time until he finally started his own business. He'd been working with you two for a long time until he finally started his own business. You can use the conjunction over here, I would say, because after until we have subject plus verb. So you can use the conjunction until. Sometimes you can use it as a preposition. For example, you may say, he had been doing his homework until 9 p.m. last night. Look, it's the current time. Okay, I'm talking about something that was in progress, okay, for a while. I'm mentioning the duration of time, and I'm using until, so that's possible. So we can use until before. Time expression, we can use it before, a class subject plus verb. So that's also possible. Okay, so keep in mind that you can also use past perfect, progressive tense to talk about cause and effect in the past. That's also possible. Or reason and result. And usually these kind of sentences answer the question why. Why something was going on, okay? Look at the first example. He was too sleepy this morning because he'd been playing a game all night last night. Let's say he'd been playing PUBG game all night last night. So this morning, now look, he was too sleepy this morning. This is the effect, or this is the result. And the fact that he'd been playing a game all night last night, that was the reason, or that was the cause. Okay, so cause and effect, or reason result. In other words, this sentence answers the question why. For example, why was he too sleepy this morning? This is the question. Why was he too sleepy this morning? Because he'd been playing, a game all night last night. So possible. We can talk about cause and effect in the past using past perfect continuous tense. Don't forget this. Okay, look at example number 5. So that was a kind of complex sentence because, the conjunction because is there. And after because, there's adverb clause of cause and effect. So there's the combination of two clauses. He was too sleepy this morning. It's a independent clause because he had been playing. So that is the dependent clause. The combination of these two clauses makes a complex sentence. There's a complex sentence. Example number 5. She was too exhausted last night for she'd been working all day yesterday. The concept is the same concept, but the structure is different. So now this is a compound sentence because we have combined two independent clauses using the one of the fanboys conjunctions for, okay? So, and there's a comma before that conjunction. So the sentence is, a compound sentence. But the concept is the same concept. Now, the question is that why was she too exhausted last night? Why? That's the question. For here means because. For she'd been working all day yesterday. So she'd been working all day yesterday. That was the cause. That was the reason. And she was too exhausted. Last night is the result of that. Cause. This is the result, or this is the effect. Okay. So cause and effect, or reason and result. And number 6, the U.S. Army had been losing a lot of soldiers in the war, so Donald Trump decided to withdraw their troops from Afghanistan. Again, look, this is also a compound sentence. We have used the conjunction so over there when we talk about, again, a kind of expected result over here. We talk about kind of expected result. So why did the U.S. Army why did Donald Trump decide to withdraw all the troops from Afghanistan? So again, there's cause and effect, okay? So the U.S. Army had been losing a lot of soldiers in the war. This is the effect, okay? So Donald Trump decided to withdraw their troops from Afghanistan. So in other words, we talk about kind of expected result. Okay, so that is the result, that he decided to withdraw all of their troops from Afghanistan. So result. Okay, cause and effect, or reason and result. Losing the soldiers, reason. Okay, leaving Afghanistan is the result. Oh, that is the cause and this is the effect. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the explanation of past perfect progressive tense. This much is enough. Have a great time. Bye-bye.